On a bitter February afternoon in 1957, when the cold winds swept through the lonely stretches of Fox Chase on the northern edge of Philadelphia, a secret lay hidden in the weeds and brush off Susquehanna Road. A secret so small yet so devastating, it would etch itself into history as one of America's most haunting, unsolved mysteries. For there in a discarded cardboard box, once meant for a baby's bassinet, now damp and battered by the elements, lay the lifeless body of a little boy, his frame frail and thin, his skin bruised, his hair crudely chopped as though someone had tried to disguise him even in death. And the image was so shocking that even those who stumbled upon it recoiled. For the first man who saw the box, a young fellow checking his muskrat traps, turned away in fear, unwilling to confront what he thought he had seen. And it was only later when another passerby approached that the truth was confirmed, the police were called, and the world was introduced to a child who would come to be known only by the cruel title, The Boy in the Box, because no one, not then and not for years after, could give him the dignity of a name. The scene was grim. A naked child between 4 and 6 years old, malnourished and scarred, wrapped loosely in a thin blanket, placed inside the box like refuse to be forgotten. And yet the details burned themselves into the minds of detectives. The blue eyes that would never open again. The signs of neglect carved into his small body. The fresh haircut so uneven and hurried, it seemed less like grooming and more like a disguise. And when the medical examiner conducted the autopsy, the revelations deepened the sorrow, for this boy had suffered, his body bearing the marks of beatings, starvation, and mistreatment. And though science revealed his pain, it could not reveal his name. And so the investigation began with a riddle that grew more tangled by the hour. Detectives scoured the area, pulling at every thread they could find, from the manufacturer of the bassinet box to the fibers of the blanket, from fingerprints to footprints in the muddy ground. But each clue led nowhere. And when they turned to the community, distributing flyers with the boy's picture, canvassing neighborhoods, orphanages, foster homes, and schools, they were met with silence. Not one missing child's report that matched him, not one parent who stepped forward to claim him. And in that silence, the horror deepened. For how could a child vanish so completely that no one mourned him publicly? How could a life so young be erased as though it had never existed? The case captured the imagination of the press, headlines blaring about the cardboard coffin, photographs of the boy's reconstructed face appearing in newspapers nationwide. His features soft and sad, and still no recognition came. No family appeared, as though he had lived in the shadows and been discarded into them again. And soon theories began to swirl like storm clouds. Some whispered he had been kept in a secret foster home where abuse was routine. Others believed he was the child of desperate parents who hid him away until his death forced their hand. Still others suggested he had been sold or trafficked, unwanted and unloved. A child shuffled from hand to hand until none would claim him, and investigators, though burdened with possibilities, were starved of proof. Over the years, detectives clung to hope, reopening the case time and again, chasing down leads that seemed promising only to collapse under scrutiny, listening to confessions from drifters and criminals eager for attention, each one false, each one draining precious time. And all the while the boy's small body lay buried under a headstone that bore no name. Only the words, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy," a phrase that encapsulated both compassion and tragedy. For those strangers cared enough to mark his grave with prayer. No one knew the truth of his life. No one could speak the name his mother might have whispered once. And so he became a symbol, America's unknown child, his anonymity as heavy as the earth that covered him. The decades rolled on, and with them came new technology, advances in forensic science that breathed flickers of hope into the cold case. Artists reconstructing his face in clay, forensic experts imagining what he might have looked like smiling, what his life could have been if it had not been cut short, and volunteers driven by obsession and compassion dedicated themselves to keeping his memory alive. Because though the killer had silenced him, they refused to let the world forget, and in that refusal lay a kind of justice, if not yet the justice of a courtroom. Among the countless theories that emerged, One of the most notorious was a story told by a woman named Martha, who claimed she had grown up in an abusive home where the boy had been taken in, beaten, and eventually killed. But her account, though chilling, was dismissed for lack of evidence. And still the mystery lingered, stronger than rumor, deeper than speculation, until the boy in the box was less a case file and more a legend. A story whispered in true crime circles as the riddle that no one could solve, the child who seemed to have been erased from life itself. Yet the investigators never fully gave up, and neither did the public, because there was something unbearably human about the story, something that cut deeper than other crimes. The image of a small boy, denied even the recognition of a name, dumped into a box as though he were disposable, forced society to reckon with cruelty, to wonder about the unseen children hidden in neglect, to ask how many others suffered behind closed doors. And though the answers never came, the boy became a symbol, a reminder of the responsibility to notice, to care, to protect. Then decades later, as DNA technology became sharper and genetic genealogy opened new doors, investigators exhumed the boy's remains, extracting samples, building family trees, chasing down distant relatives who had never known him, but whose blood carried the same threads. And for the first time, there was real hope. Hope that science could give back what cruelty had stolen. Hope that America's unknown child might one day be unknown no longer. And though authorities have more recently whispered that his name has been uncovered, though the details are still shrouded in secrecy as investigators tread carefully between revelation and privacy, the truth remains that his murder, the violence and neglect that led him to that cardboard coffin in the weeds of Philadelphia, is still without a face, still without justice, and until the day that someone is named, someone held accountable, his story remains not just a closed file, but an open wound. For more than 60 years, the boy in the box has haunted investigators, journalists, and everyday people who stumbled across his story. Because he is more than a case, he is the embodiment of stolen innocence, of questions left unanswered, of the chilling possibility that sometimes a child can vanish into silence and the world does not notice. And though his cardboard coffin was unworthy of his humanity, the story told again and again ensures he is not forgotten, ensures that his memory continues to breathe, ensures that even nameless, he matters. And so the boy in the box remains both a tragedy and a riddle, a child whose silence speaks louder than words. For more chilling mysteries and stories that must never be forgotten, subscribe to Dark Thread Chronicles and walk with us into the places where truth hides in the dark.